Hello, friends! We are back with something a little bit different today. Not a full-fledged return to hashtag content, but you know what? I thought if you haven't seen the news, and why would you have seen the news? Not the important news. The news about Saw 11 being essentially forever cancelled. Let me just turn the music down on my end a little bit. My apologies. I thought, you know what better time than now to do something which has been bouncing around in my head for a little while. Far from the first person to do this, of course. It's a pretty obvious kind of concept to come up with, but I thought, you know what? I'm off work for a little while. Let's just do it. So, this is a unedited stream of consciousness tier list of all 77 Saw traps, and while it is unscripted and unedited, that's sheer laziness on my part. I have made some notes on every single one of them. So, without further ado, well, actually, a little bit of ado first of all. So I've not ranked these, but I have given them all like scores based on. Whoa, that's unfortunate. Scores based on how bad they are, how much you don't want to be in them, which for the most part. Quite bad. How bad they are if they kill you. There are a few that can't kill you, actually, which is interesting. We're going to get into that. As well as that, not to do with the tier ranking, but how much the people deserve to be in the trap. Because, of course, the idea of Saw is that these people, on some level, aren't doing great things with their lives. That's not always the case, as we'll get into. I'm a huge Saw nerd, and while I did have the Wikipedia page open for some of this stuff, it is made by people far more Saw nerdy than me. Most of this is just my own kind of knowledge and understanding of the films, which are not good films, by the way. They're just bad films. But we all like bad things sometimes. In my experience, anyway. I certainly do, and you can't stop me. So, anyway, let's get into it. So we've got 77 traps to get into. I'm going to do this in one take because that means I don't have to open my video editor at all. So first, and most infamously, is the bathroom trap. Oh, the tiers, by the way? 2 seconds. The tiers. The default ones are kind of uninspiring, so I redid them. Unwinnable ones at the top, and everything else somewhere in the middle, probably. So the bathroom trap is the most iconic, I would say, Saw trap. It's the one everyone thinks of, apart from the other one from the first film, which we will also get into. The victims in this one are Adam and Lawrence, Dr. Lawrence Gordon. Lawrence has been unfaithful to his wife, and possibly medically incompetent, certainly medically distant. But I think that the incompetence angle is kind of a retcon. There's some mention in a later film about him being like slow to save John's life. I think that's kind of a throwaway line that they had. I don't think it's really meant to be taken as canon. Anyway, Adam's crime is ennui. He's just a bit like about his life, which is not great. This is a winnable trap, and in fact, hey buddy, there's a small dog. Lawrence does win, but it's too late to save his family. Cuts his own foot off as Zet is. Sorry, I've been distracted by a small man. I don't think you can see, but you may see in the future. This is very helpful, Ava. Love you. Can you see the man? No, there's her tail. Anyway, Lawrence has to either kill Adam or cut his foot off and escape. Adam has to cut his foot off to escape before Lawrence kills him. Otherwise, 6 p.m. or Lawrence's family are going to be killed. See you later, buddy. Spoiler alert, there's going to be a lot of spoilers. They are not killed, but not because Lawrence wins, but because there's a concurrent police investigation ongoing, which is able to save the lives of Lawrence Gordon's wife and child. Anyway, I put this in a pretty bad day. Yeah, it's iconic. It's iconic and very likely to kill someone. Adam does die, Lawrence nearly dies. It's a full day. I mean, some of the traps, particularly some of the later traps, are like you get a few minutes, particularly in Saw 10, which we'll get to in about 4 hours. this is a full day of horror. We don't love it. The next one is the razor wire maze. This is a short one, sort of shown in a flashback. The victim is a man called Paul, who is clearly in a bad place in his life. He is depressed, he is self-harming. It's possible he's an alcoholic, but it's only really kind of implied, never really stated. This one is unwinnable. How do I know it's unwinnable? He makes a good faith effort to escape and still dies. I don't know what else Jigsaw could possibly want. I gave this one a 0 for deserving this, because this guy just needs help, frankly. And Jigsaw is kind of trying to provide that in a way that is, I would say, wholly inappropriate. Anyway, so I put this in probably unwinnable, because maybe there's a way to escape. Paul is a bigger guy. Maybe a lither man might be able to get out, but Paul couldn't. And it was only Paul that was in there, so I'm going to call that one very likely unwinnable. Next one is the flammable jelly trap. It's one of my least favourite ones in the entire franchise. So this is a guy called Mark. It's never really stated what he did wrong, I think. Unless I missed it in a flashback or something, but I don't think so. The wiki seems to think it's health fraud, or like he pretended to be ill to get handouts. Maybe, I don't know. I could have been a lot of things, honestly. And to be honest, Mark also makes a good faith effort to escape. He's not really shown struggling particularly or wasting time, and he still just dies. So I'm going to put this in probably unwinnable. Again, doesn't really seem like he had a fair shot. The next one is the other super iconic Saw trap that everyone knows. This is the reverse bear trap. I'm not going to go into too much detail about some of the more minor traps, but this one and some of the more major ones I'm going to talk a little bit about. This one's rough, man. Extremely unpleasant. So she has devices hooked into her jaw, which if she doesn't get the device off in time, will spring open and just rip her jaw apart. It's shown crushing the skull of a mannequin. We don't see, at least at this point in the series, what it looks like when it goes off on a human, but unpleasant, I would say. So Amanda's crimes are drug use and self-harm. Again, this is someone who just needs help, right? This is someone who and John would know this, right? I mean, I guess the whole point and why he goes after drug dealers and drug addicts a lot is because he does not think that the establishment is very good at dealing with these problems, as demonstrated by his wife's clinic, which we'll talk about in Saw 4. This is a winnable one, and Amanda wins, which is very unusual for Saw, both the first film and all of the others. She doesn't deserve to be here. She does in fact succeed, but in order to succeed she has to kill someone else. She's told that the key to the device is in the stomach of her dead cellmate. Turns out that guy's just straight up not dead. We don't know who he is, we don't know anything about him. The fan theory is that he's like her boyfriend or whatever. It's never stated, it's just bollocks, frankly. So I have to put this in unfair or someone has to die. Because someone has to die. And someone does, and she never really seems to mention it or think about it again. The next one is the drill chair. The man in this trap is called Jeff. Jeff 1, I've dubbed him. We don't know what he did wrong, if anything. He's just there in case someone breaks into Jigsaw's lair to give him time to escape. The idea is that this guy's in a chair with 2 drills which are closing in on his temples. Very unpleasant, we don't like it. But, we don't know why he's there. He's done nothing wrong. He's just there so that the good guys have to save him before they can chase Jigsaw. This is unwinnable, because there's nothing he can do to save himself, and there's a lot of these in Saw, quite frankly. Just checking what, showing you my spreadsheet. I'm not. No, that's cool. So, I don't want to put it in... I don't want to say it's unwinnable, because if it's unwinnable by design. I mean, he does live, and he's not physically harmed, psychologically, definitely super harmed. I think I would put this in... I think I've got to put this in a pretty bad day. Because that guy's probably been there a while, right? I don't think Jigsaw has any idea the cops are coming, specifically. Now. because he's gone to great lengths to make sure that the bathroom is hidden, and it in fact remains hidden until Saw 2, and then sort of gets forgotten about after Saw 2. Yeah, I think I've got to put it in a pretty bad day. It's not really a trap, it's a defensive trap. And there's a couple of these coming up. For example, the shotgun hallway. The victim is Steven Singh, and his crime is being a good cop. Again, there's a few of these. This is winnable in the sense of if you listen to Jigsaw and don't follow him, although I don't think Steven's even warned about this, so you could say it's unwinnable, then you'll be fine. Of course, if you are a good cop, you probably don't just stop pursuing an active murderer when they say, stop pursuing me. And again, there's a few of these. This is not a trap. I mean, so it is a trap in the sense of it's literally a trap. What it is not a trap in the sense of is being a Saw trap, which are by definition sort of not traps. I hope that clears everything up. Zepp's test is next. This is sort of the ballast to Gordon's game, the bathroom trap, where Zepp is being forced to hold Dr. Lawrence Gordon's family hostage until 6 p.m. If at that point Gordon has won and Adam is dead, Zepp will just let Gordon's family go. If Gordon loses his game, Zepp has to kill Gordon's wife and child. Not great. Zepp's crime is absolutely nothing. In fact, he's shown on a few occasions, and he's shown being generally quite compassionate. As he's sort of in the room when Gordon is talking to some junior docs about John Kramer's case, and Zepp actually interrupts Gordon, and he's like, he's not a patient, his name is John, he's a very interesting person. Clearly this is a person. I work in healthcare myself, right, and it's the good people in healthcare are the ones that remember that there's a patient there, right, and they're an actual person, and don't just see them as a collection of symptoms. So I like Zepp a lot. He is shown to take quite a lot of glee in torturing, psychologically torturing, definitely still a form of torture, Gordon's family. So overall characterization all over the place. It's not really a trap. He's just sort of being forced to do something. There's a subtle distinction there that I can't quite put my finger on, but I hope you know what I mean. When I say that it's not really a Saw trap, right? Not in the way that the bathroom trap is. I guess because Zepp is being forced to do what he's doing in the sense that if he doesn't just do it, he's just going to die. He's not being forced to harm himself. He is being forced to harm other people. Maybe you could say it as a trap. I'm going to put it in a pretty bad day. Because there's very little that could make me do some of the things that Zepp does. I'm not a great guy. Hopefully the music's not too loud. There's a lot of variable volume going on here. That's alright. Okay, so we're on to Saw 2, and we open on one of the strongest contenders, which is Michael's death mask. Michael's crime is being a police informant, which, fine, I mean, Jigsaw hates cops and cop informants, so I guess at least he's consistent. This is a winnable game. Whether you want to win it is another matter. Michael has an Iron Maiden around his neck, basically, a Venus flytrap, I think it's referred to. And again, it's a contraption he has around his head that he has to get off before it goes off, and if it goes off, it's going to slam shut in his head and slam spikes into his skull. Which is what ends up happening. Spoilers, and I think it would happen to you and it would happen to me as well. What Michael has to do is extremely bad, extremely unpleasant. Michael has the key to the device hidden in the room with him, much like Amanda did for her test. In his case, it is behind his eye. It's just been put in behind the eye socket. Frankly, you don't do that without taking the eye out, and once you take the eye out, it's not going back in, but a little bit of artistic license, he's going to have to dig his eye out to get at the key. He can't do it. He can't bring himself to do it. He gets the skull, puts it to his eye, he just doesn't have what it takes, I guess. And frankly, neither do you and neither do I. It's a very, very, very unfair one. Excuse me. Bumping the mic stand again. Have I fucked the mic up? I have not. Wonderful news. Michael does not deserve to be here, frankly, for being a police informant. I mean, you know, you're kind of, depending on who you're informing on, you may be risking some pretty unpleasant fates, but probably not something this unpleasant. Maybe. Anyway, he can't go through with it. Slam shot in his face, kills him. I think I'm going to put this in unfair. This is unfair, or someone has to die. No one has to die, but I just don't think the vast, vast majority of people could bring themselves to do this. I think it's effectively out of his control. Next one is the electrified staircase. 3 SWAT guys. This is just a defensive trap. They run up the staircase. They trigger a booby trap. One of the stairs slides out and just breaks the shins of the guy in front. He falls into the guys behind him. It's very slapstick, lol. And they just fall into an electrified cage and die. It's sort of winnable in the sense that you know what you're getting into. You know there's likely to be some booby traps when you are infiltrating Jigsaw's lair. It's pretty unpleasant. It is, however, again, not a trap in the sense of being a saw trap. Okay, so the next one is it says nerve gas house. I'm going to put this at the back because, frankly, these are all... you could say the nerve gas house is like Daniel's test, but it's very unclear what the parameters of that are. So I'm not going to do that one. We're going to treat all of them individually. We've got the Magnum eye hole. So, the victim here is Gus. There's no, named victim. It's not intended for anyone specific, at least as far as I'm aware. In Saw 2, there's a couple of cases where people end up in traps meant for other people. This is just essentially intended to keep everyone in the room until the rules have been read. There's probably better ways to do it, but I guess the point is, hey, if you don't listen to the rules, you're going to regret not listening to the rules. So Gus's crime is trying to get out of the house that he's just been told is filling with nerve gas. It's fairly understandable. And in doing that, he gets shot via a rigged gun. It's actually Xavier, I believe, that opens the door, and Gus, for whatever reason, is looking through the keyhole, even though the door opens inwards, I believe. He's looking through the keyhole while Xavier's trying to open it. Either way, wire gets tripped, gun goes off through the keyhole, bits of Gus go everywhere. I think this is a trap, and I think this is a trap because he was told the rules, right, which is stay in the room. There's a couple of these in Saw 2. I would still try and get out. Frank, I think this is unfair. I don't think you can expect him to just stay there and just obey your instructions not to leave. That does not seem reasonable to me in the slightest. So I think that's unfair. The next one is the furnace. This is another iconic one. This trap is intended for Obby, who ends up going into it. His crimes, and this is the first person with actual proper crimes so far. Yep. Everyone else is just like a guy that Jigsaw doesn't like. Obby is apparently a chronic liar. It's not like a crime, depending on what he's lying about. But he did also abduct at least some of the other participants. He's shown abducting Laura. Laura doesn't die in a trap, actually. She succumbs to the effects of the nerve gas. But Obby does die in a trap, and it's the furnace. So in here, I mean, this is the nerve gas house, right? These guys are all in a house which is filling with nerve gas, unsurprisingly, and have to retrieve antidotes by putting themselves through horrible tests. There are actually 2 antidotes on offer here. You can take one for free. If you're greedy and try and take the second one, that's when the trap goes off, and you have to reach through the flames in order to, I guess, pull a lever or pull a chain. I think it's a lever. I haven't seen Saw 2 in a while. In order to free yourself. Obby doesn't like this one very much. He doesn't like it very much. I'm going to put this in, honestly, I would still hate this. I know it's horrible. The way he dies is horrible. However, I think if you just gotta reach through the flames and pull the lever and then the flames stop right away, I don't know, man. That's a pretty bad day. But they're all pretty bad days. That's why I called this tier. Honestly, I would still hate this. I think it was originally called something like, you call that a trap? And I'm like, well, yeah, dude, they all suck. Anyway, very bad. Don't like it. Needle Pit. Needle Pit's the other classic one. This one is intended for Xavier, who's a drug dealer and is violent and is implied to be a murderer. However, he's also kind of a coward. And he puts Amanda into the trap instead. Amanda is there actually in sort of a supervisory role, playing the role of a victim, but she's actually just there to look after Daniel, who is the bait for Detective Eric Matthews. This is all kind of really Eric Matthews' game. Which is actually not listed here. It's a bit of a shame. Anyway, so the Needle Pit, there is an antidote in a safe, and the key to the safe is in a big old pit of used needles. I believe it took like a dozen people something like 3 days to take all of the needles out of syringes and replace them with like flexible rubber prosthetics to make it look real. But Shawnee Smith, who by the way was pregnant at the time of filming and didn't tell anyone, as far as I understand it, gets picked up and thrown into this pit of needles, which are obviously, they've had the actual needles removed and replaced with rubber prosthetics, and she's like raking through them looking for this key. Shawnee Smith, one of the best actors in Saw, really, really like her performance in this scene in particular. However, I would hate to be her. This is an interesting one because it doesn't actually kill you straight up, right? You don't get an antidote, but there are actually more antidotes than people, so that may not be the end of the world. I'm going to put it in a pretty bad day. I'm not terrible with needles. I have a big old fear of like blood tests and vaccinations, but needles themselves aren't the problem. It's white coat syndrome. It's the medical establishment that I don't like, which working in healthcare is a problem, but that's not really what we're here to discuss. I think I would be as okay as anyone with a Needle Pit, which is to say, really bad. Next up is the Razor Box. This one, Addison actually goes through this, but it's not intended to be her trap. It's intended to be Gus's trap, because he is embezzling. I think there's some reference in a deleted scene to him having his hand in the cookie jar, I believe, so presumably embezzlement. Anyway, this is kind of a dumb one, because the conceit is that there's an antidote in like a Perspex box up above you. There are 2 holes for you to put your hands through and potentially grab it. However, the holes have folding razors in them. So when you put your hand up, the razors dig into your wrists and you can't get your hands back out again. However, if you walk around to the other side of the box, you can just reach in and grab it. So, I mean, anyway, very unclear. This just feels like a kind of a Taskmaster gotcha. But anyway, this one sucks. Dying in this looks very, very unpleasant, and I think I would hate it. However, I think I gotta put it in. Honestly, I would still hate this just because there's a couple of easy ways around it. Right, like Addison dies when she puts her second hand up. Right, when she puts her first hand up, tries to grab the antidote, realizes that she can't get her hand out again, panics, puts her other hand up. You just gotta go up this way, right? It's like don't panic the trap. I think I would maybe live, which is more than I can say for just about any other trap here. So, moving on to Saw 3, we have some of Amanda's traps in this one. The classroom trap. The victim here is Troy, who is a drug addict and general crimer. This one's unwinnable. He has to escape a classroom before some nail bombs go off, killing him. In order to do that, he has to pull chains out of various parts of his body. However, the last one is hooked through his jaw, which you obviously can't get that out, right? You would have to pull your jaw off, which also kills you. So this is... God, excuse me, I keep knocking the mic stand. I'm not used to recording. I've got to put this in unwinnable by design. And the same with the Angel trap. This is Detective Kerry. Her trap is like... Her crime, is liking her job too much. It's unwinnable by design. It's one of the most brutal deaths in the series. Certainly the series so far, I would say the series as a whole. She has to reach her hand into a vat of acid to get the key to the device, it's hooked into her ribs. So, turns out you can't just take that off. It pulls her ribs apart and she dies. This is Amanda just being a dick. Next up is the shotgun collar. Victim here is Lynn Denlin, and her crime is being depressed about her son being killed. I feel pretty bad for Lynn here. Yes, there's like some infidelity, but she's also clearly shown to be estranged from her husband, so it's very unclear whether she's really doing anything wrong there. Certainly nothing that justifies being put in a shotgun collar and having to perform brain surgery on someone. This, I've got it listed as an unwinnable trap, because, yes, she can keep herself alive by keeping John alive, but she can't actually get the collar off without Amanda's help. So this really ties into Amanda's test, which we'll talk about later, but for now, I'm going to put it in probably unwinnable, because it depends on Amanda letting you live, which is very much the theme of Saw 3, is that doesn't happen. So next up is the freezer room. The victim is Danica. And her crime is... So this is part of Jeff's test, and Jeff, which we'll talk about later, his son was hit and killed by a drunk driver. And a couple of the people in these tests, including Danica, was in some way complicit. Danica was apparently the sole witness. Very unclear how Jigsaw knows that, without also being a witness himself. Very, very deeply, deeply unclear. Anyway, she is strung up, naked. One thing that Saw never does, and I really like that it never does it, is sexual torture. Not for me. I've seen Salo. I've seen, I've seen some unpleasant stuff. I don't like it. It's unpleasant. This is the closest I would say that Saw comes to that. It's not sexual torture, but it's like a bit exhibitionistic. Apparently, they were originally going to have her strung up in just her underwear or a t-shirt or something, but then they thought that looked too sexual, so having her naked made her just look human, which I can respect. Anyway, she's being sprayed with freezing water, and Jeff has to reach in and get a key, and he gets a little cut on his face from the ice like tearing a bit of skin away. It's really sad. Anyway, he's way too fucking slow to do it, and she dies. It's probably unwinnable because it depends on someone else's actions, in this case Jeff. Next one's iconic. This is Judge Holden's pig vat. Judge Holden... So the drunk driver that killed Dylan, Jeff's son, was given a lenient sentence due to a lack of evidence, because that's how that works. Really not sure how the writers think that works. Anyway, because Danica, the witness, didn't come forward, the judge was like, well, I can't lock you up forever, but I'll still lock you up for a bit, because I still think you're guilty. Anyway, Judge Holden is like chained down by the neck in like a neck shackle in a big old vat in a meatpacking plant. And I mean, a lot of people think this is really like unrealistic, but my father worked in a meatpacking plant for a long time, an abattoir and packing plant, and he was an engineer, and he's told me some stories. These things exist. They are for getting rid of stuff you don't want, and cleaning them out is incredibly dangerous and incredibly disgusting, and you're about to see why. So Judge Holden is chained down by the neck, and a bunch of rotten pigs come in and are essentially minced up and start to fill the vat that he's in, and obviously he's going to drown. I don't love it. I'm going to put it in... I'm going to put it in unfair, partly because I think Judge Holden does not deserve to be there. He's just doing his job at the end of the day. Yeah, I don't... It's disgusting, right? But it's not violent. Like, drowning? Very, very bad. You don't like it. But it's... I don't know, it's just gross. Let's just move on. The next one is the Rack. Timothy's Rack. So this is, of course, the guy who actually killed Jeff's son, Dylan. He is shown to show remorse for killing him. It's clearly an accident. Dylan does come straight out into the road, right in front of Timothy's car. I think it's pretty unclear that Timothy would have been able to stop if he was sober. Not excusing drunk driving. Drunk driving, very, very bad. But I think that kid was probably dead either way. Either way, this is another one where it is probably unwinnable. Well, no, it's not probably unwinnable. If Jeff is quick about it, which he isn't in any of these, Timothy's going to get out with... I mean, I suppose... So the Rack is twisting his limbs through 360 degrees one by one, right? Ending with his neck, and obviously that kills you. But I think you probably die before that from blood loss, because your skin can't rotate that far. Your blood vessels generally can't rotate that far. Your muscles are going to be completely shredded. You are going to be dead of blood loss well before it even gets to your head. So I think this is unfair. It could well be unwinnable. Deeply unpleasant. One of the worst deaths in the entire franchise, and that is saying something. So now we're going to get into a couple of more kind of psychological ones. This is Amanda's test. So Amanda doesn't know she's being tested, but she is being tested for a lack of compassion. She's going to be taking over Jigsaw's work after he's gone. And all she has to do is let Lynn live. If Amanda lets Lynn live, Amanda's free to go and to carry on. But Amanda doesn't like Lynn very much, doesn't like doctors very much. We'll find out why in Saw 10. Amanda thinks that she can kind of kill Lynn with impunity and no one will really mind or care. She doesn't know she's being tested. However, she also doesn't know that Jeff is Lynn's husband, however estranged. And he's probably going to try and avenge Lynn's death, right? He's probably looking for an excuse to kill someone anyway. I think it's a little bit unclear that Amanda letting Lynn die is necessarily going to lead to Jeff killing Amanda, but that is what ends up happening. It's a really tough one to rate, I would say. I think because I like letting people live in general, I would probably put this in, honestly, I would still hate this. I think it is a trap, as much as Zepp's trap is a trap, or Zepp's test is a trap. I think you've got to call Amanda's test a trap. Test, trap, whatever. Alright, so Jeff's final test. Jeff's crime is being depressed about his son's death. We're noticing a theme here. Jigsaw doesn't like it when you're depressed no matter what, even though he also tried to kill himself. I guess that's also sort of the point. So this is another one where it's actually non-fatal for Jeff specifically. If Jeff allows John to live, Lynn lives, and by extension Jeff can live. If Jeff kills John, then very likely, Lynn will die, and very likely Amanda will try to kill Jeff. It's a bit of a complicated one, and there's a lot of different ways it could play out. I think, all in all, I'm gonna put this honorarily in a pretty bad day, because just having a rough fucking time, man. It's just having a rough day. Anyway, the reason that this kind of ends ambiguously is because Jeff actually lives at the end of Saw 3 and is going to play another game to save his daughter, I think, who's also been taken captive. But there was a change in writers between Saw 3 and 4, and they just didn't follow up on it, and then Jeff is killed in Saw 4 by Agent Peter Strahm. So, speaking of Saw 4, got already a third of the way through. How long have I been going for? 35 minutes. Feels like longer. It's the Mausoleum Trap. The Mausoleum Trap. The victims here are Art Blank and a man called Trevor. Art's crime is being a defense attorney. He's a lawyer who... He's a lawyer, a defense lawyer, who represents people he knows are guilty. which is apparently a crime and not just the way that all democratic justice systems work. No crime is given for Trevor. This is technically a winnable trap in the sense that there is theoretically a sequence of actions you can take in order to win. Which is sort of like saying, I play a lot of Slay the Spire. This is related, and Slay the Spire is of course a legendary at this point roguelike deck builder. And people sometimes ask, are there any runs in Slay the Spire that are unwinnable? You're just not given the tools you need to win. And the answer is, well, technically yes, but the overwhelming majority of people are never going to see one. They're vanishingly rare. Because there is always a sequence of cards that you can play in order to win. A sequence of cards that, just by the way they play out, will get you through the challenges ahead of you. Whether those sequence of cards are something that any sane person would do without knowing the outcome in advance is another matter. And it's kind of the same thing here. Art can't speak and Trevor can't see. Art's mouth is sewn shut, Trevor's eyes are sewn shut. There's no reasonable way for them to communicate, or at least for Art to communicate with Trevor. Trevor can't see shit, so he can't say anything of use either. And Art can see everything that's going on with unfolding horror, but can't tell Trevor about it, so Trevor naturally is going to assume that Art is hostile to him. The two men are chained by the neck. Trevor has the key to presumably both of their shackles around his neck, and Art attempts to beat Trevor to death to take the key for himself, because Trevor is obviously going mad, like swinging around trying to figure out what's going on, because he's being pulled by a chain around the neck towards something. What's he being pulled towards? It's a gap between two metal posts about this thick. I'm pretty sure that kills you if you're pulled through it by the neck. Anyway, Art grabs the key from Trevor, unlocks his shackles, and we don't see what happens to Trevor, but then Art screams and rips all the stitches out of his mouth. I suppose he could have done that before. Doesn't seem reasonable. I mean, I guess that could have been the intent. It's not really ever seen as being the intent. I think I have to call this unfair, because I think the chance of Trevor surviving here are next to none. Not a great trap, in my opinion. Next up is the Sculping Seat. So this is Brenda. Brenda actually has two tests here. I'm going to treat them as being the same because I didn't want to make a new icon. But yes, the Sculping Seat is Brenda's first test. Brenda is she's a child pimp. I mean, this video's not getting monetized for a million reasons, so I'm just going to say she's a child pimp. I think that's bad, for the record. She is strapped into a chair. Her long hair is wound into braids and threaded through the gears of a mechanism which is pulling it back and is slowly tearing the hair and, of course, subsequently the skin from her scalp. Don't love it. She can't do anything to save herself. This is part of Rig's overarching test. Detective Rig is a police officer whose crime is wanting to save people. He has a bit of a hero complex, and he wants to save people, even people that Jigsaw himself, in his infinite wisdom, has decreed have to save themselves. And Brenda is, I think it's intended to teach him that not everyone deserves to be saved, because he can save her, and he does save her, but if he saves her, of course, he's a cop and she's a child pimp, so he's going to arrest her. He's been given all the evidence he needs to do so, and to put her away, hopefully, for life. Brenda, upon her saving, takes a knife from a place where she's already been told it is, and attempts to kill Rig in order to save herself. She fails to kill him, and he kills her in self-defense. I'm going to put the Sculping Seat in... It's probably... I can't see any situation in which she's able to kill Rig. Rig has a gun. He doesn't kill her with it, but he has a gun, and he could have killed her with it. He's trying not to. I think Brenda's pretty much dead no matter what here. Unless she lets him take her in, which I suppose she could. That's reasonable. I think it's I think it's a problem. I'll put it in unfair, maybe. Yeah, I think that's going in unfair. Next up is the bedroom trap. This is quite a cathartic one. It's a very, very nasty one. This guy is Ivan, who is a rapist and voyeur. Again, bad, don't like it. That's his crime. One of the relatively few things on this massive list which actually are crimes. However, this is a winnable game. Kinda. I frankly think it still kills you even if you succeed, but Ivan is forced onto a bed at gunpoint, as is befitting a rapist, and he is given the tools he needs to save his life, which are 2 buttons, one for each hand. One button gouges your left eye out, the other one gouges your right eye out. I think you've got, 60 seconds, something like that? And if you've still got any eyes left at the end of that 60 seconds, the chains just pull in all 4 directions at once and you are exploded. It's bad, and I hate it. I think probably you die of shock from gouging your own eyes out, but I'm going to put it in unfair, quite charitably. Not because I don't think he deserves it, to be very clear. I think if anyone deserves to be put in a sword trap, it's probably this guy. However, I don't realistically think, for the same reasons as the death mass, I don't think most people possess the wherewithal to go through that. I think if you do it, you have to do both at once. And you try and do one, and then with that experience fresh in your mind, I don't think you bring yourself to press the other button. But anyway, very unpleasant. The next one up is the spike trap. I've seen this referred to as Cupid's arrow, which I think is a little bit romanticizing of domestic violence, because that's what's happened here. The 2 people in question are Rex and Morgan. Morgan is a person in an abusive relationship, and Rex is her abusive husband. So Morgan's crime is allowing her husband to abuse her, I suppose. Great, good ethics, Jigsaw. It's winnable though, and it's not the most unpleasant sword trap. It's not great. All she has to do is pull the rods that are holding her and her husband back to back, which are pierced through both of their bodies, but they're pierced through his arteries and not hers. So once the rods are gone, he's going to bleed to death pretty quickly. She will have some pretty serious injuries, but we'll get out. I think I've got to put this in honesty. I would still hate this. I'm not saying it's good, but yeah, not great. But I think of all the sword traps, I think that's one that I could probably handle the most. Not that I think I would necessarily still live, because I'm a coward. Next up is, again, not really a trap. This is the explosive puppet. It's kind of a trap. The victim here, victims plural really, are Special Agents Lindsay Perez and Peter Strahm. Lindsay's the victim, really, in the sense that she's next to the puppet when it goes off and blasts her face full of shrapnel. She lives through dumb luck. It's implied for a while that she's dead, she's not dead, but Hoffman believes she's dead. Her crime is investigating Jigsaw, and again, not listening to him when he says, "Don't come any closer." I'm actually not convinced he even says that in this trap. He warns her that Peter Strahm is going to kill an innocent man, Jeff, I believe. But the idea that Jigsaw considers Jeff innocent is very funny. Although I suppose at that point he's passed his test, so he's redeemed, but redeemed and innocent are not the same thing. This feels deeply unfair. It's kind of a defensive trap intended to ward off Special Agents Strahm and Perez. It's never going to work. I think I'm putting it in not a trap, for the same reason as the others. It's just defensive in nature. Next up is the knife chair. This is canonically... So at the time, this was considered to be the first Jigsaw trap. I think the events of Jigsaw are actually supposed to predate this, but that's dumb and I don't like it. So I'm going to assume that the knife chair is the first ever trap. This is a cool one. The victim here is Cecil, who is a drug addict who accidentally but fairly remorselessly slams a door into Jill's pregnant belly and causes her to miscarry. It's my least favourite scene in all of Saw because of how tastelessly it's handled. It's a very upsetting scene just in general, and I think it feels gratuitous and I just don't like it. There's way more coffee in there than I thought. Jesus Christ. Alright. It's cold anyway, we're going to power through. So Cecil is in a chair, which is fine. I'm in a chair right now, and it's genuinely alright. But in front of him, unlike me, there is a sort of like a pedestal, kind of lectern thing, with kitchen knives that he has to push his face through in order to press his presumably face or forehead or something against a sensor or a pressure pad or a button of some kind. I guess a button is how a normal human would describe that. That will release him from the chair, so he has to scar his face in order to get out. The chair collapses under his weight and struggling, and presumably, it's implied because John is like pretty new at this point. I think it's intended to show that he's the old line about like known knowns and known unknowns, or known unknowns and unknown unknowns. Things you know you don't know, and things you don't know, which are the dangerous ones. That's Donald Rumsfeld, I think, famously attributed to, but it's pretty old concept. It's kind of like this, right? Like Jigsaw is smart enough to know that he's not perfect, and he always has a contingency. Okay, even though this is the only time he ever makes a mistake in the entire franchise. So Cecil's chair collapses because John is a good enough engineer to build all of this other stuff, but not a good enough engineer to know what a chair is. And Cecil tells John, "You're fucking dead!" And lunges at him, and John just steps out of the way, and Cecil runs straight into a cage of barbed wire. I'm putting this in a pretty bad day, because as intended, it's a reasonably fair jigsaw trap in that you just have you mutilate yourself and then you live, and that's you're hopefully reborn with a newfound sense of PTSD. It's a pretty bad day. I would hate it. Next up, spine cutters. Oh god. So this is Art's second trap, Art Blank's second trap, the defense attorney who is also a former friend of Jigsaw. You can even see in the picture, it may be too small for you to see here in the picture, but it's so far away from his neck, man. Like, those things could snap shut and he'd just be like, walk around like this all day, but he'd be fine. So this is unwinnable in the sense that it depends on the actions of someone else. Unfair or someone has to die, I think is probably true here. Because Art only goes free if Rig waits until the timer counts down before entering the room, even though he's been told all film that it's... I'm also a Dungeon Master, and the one thing I hate about Dungeon Masters in D&D, or Pathfinder, any game like that, Call of Cthulhu, DMs who expect the players to read their mind. Fucking hell, man. Rig had absolutely no reason to think that he had to wait before entering the room. I'm sorry, that's just not a reasonable conclusion to draw, even considering the theme of his games. In my opinion. He's been told not to intervene, but then he's also told, well, you've got to do all this, or Eric's going to die. The guy you're trying to save is going to die if you don't follow the instructions. And yeah, he's told, like, time is on your side, whatever. If you're going to test someone like that, it needs to be unambiguous, and it just isn't. So yeah. So I've sort of jumped the gun here. Next up is the ice block trap, which is really Rig's test, trying to save Eric Matthews and Mark Hoffman, although Mark Hoffman is actually revealed as being in on it the whole time, and it'll throw back to the first film. He looks like a victim, but instead at the end of the test, gets up and closes the game out. So, yeah, I mean, Rig bursts through the door with a second to spare, and Eric gets his head smashed in. This is... again, it's unfair for the same reason, right? It's basically the same thing. I'm not going to kind of litigate that. All right. So that's the first 4 films. I might take a little break in a second and grab some water. You know, we'll take a little break after Saw 5. All right, so next up is the Pendulum Trap. The victim here is Seth, who is an abusive boyfriend who murdered his girlfriend. This is unwinnable by design, and this is simply revenge that Hoffman is taking against Seth for murdering his girlfriend, who is also Hoffman's sister. Jigsaw finds out about it, doesn't like it very much. We'll get into that. What Seth has to do here is he's told that he has to crush his hands in mechanisms to be allowed to go free. However, if he doesn't, he's going to get cut in half by a big pendulum which is lowering down towards him. It's very, very poetic, very Edgar Allan Poe. And he crushes his hands and the pendulum stops, and then it starts again and he gets cut in half, and then he sees Hoffman through the door and he's like, "Oh, it was you all along." It's bad. Again, no one's really shedding any tears for this guy, but it is unwinnable by design. Next up is the Water Cube. This is Special Agent Peter Stram's first, maybe second test, if you can the explosive puppet. His crime is investigating Jigsaw, and this is an unwinnable trap by design. However, he wins anyway. His head is in a box, the box is filled up with water, he's got nothing in his pockets except, oh, it's a biro! Takes the biro apart, stabs himself through the throat with an emergency tracheotomy, and is able to breathe through that until the police arrive. It is unwinnable by design, and I'm going to put it there, because it was really just an oversight by Hoffman that he left the biro in his pocket. Honestly, it's pretty silly. Next up is the shotgun chair. This isn't a trap. This isn't a trap at all. This is an interrogation technique. I'm going to put it in not a trap. This is Jigsaw interrogating Hoffman and essentially kind of grooming him to be an accomplice. Not a trap. Not going to treat it as one. Next up is the necktie trap. This is the Fatal Five. 5 people who don't know each other for the most part, but were all involved, complicit, in a fatal arson attack. So none of them are great. They're generally just corrupt rather than malicious. But yeah, so this is in this one, they have chains around their necks, bit of a theme with Saw, and when the timer ticks down to 0, all of the chains will be pulled taut against the wall, where they rest just above giant V-shaped blades, V being, of course, the Roman numeral for 5. It's only later that Julie Benz, can't remember her character's name. I was going to call her Rita, that's her name in Dexter. Who was it? Brit? I think it's Brit. I don't think she's ever really named in the show, in the film. She realizes, all the keys would have fit all of our colours. We only needed one key. We could have just passed it back and forth, and it would have been fucking dandy. However, of course, these are all deeply selfish people who are being told to not be so selfish and to work together. I feel like I would have noticed. I don't know. It's difficult to know like what you'd be like in that situation, but I don't know, man. Because they think it's unfair or someone has to die. I think I'm gonna put it in. Honestly, I would still hate this because I think if you have the wherewithal to notice or to at least try the different keys, I think that's fairly winnable. Next up is the Sealing Jars. This is the Fatal 4, following the death of Ashley. These jars swinging from the ceiling have keys in them. These keys lead to compartments in the wall where you have to hide from nail bombs. I have a bit of a problem with this one, because the compartments, it's treated as a big reveal that the compartments all have room for multiple people, but if you were in the room, you would 100% notice that. Or you would at least, like, try to get in, right? You wouldn't be like, oh, like, there's only, like, 4 feet of room in there, I guess I'll just stand in the room and wait to die. No, you would like try and squeeze in with someone, right? You have to, and you would definitely have noticed if they had room for multiple people, even if it's not clear to the viewer because of the way the film is shot. That's fuck off. You would 100% have noticed that there was room for multiple people in there. So I'm going to put it in the lowest tier. Honestly, I would still hate this. Next up is the electric bathtub, also a trap for the Fatal 3. And they're involved in a fatal arson attack. This is winnable, depending on how many people there are left. There are 3. They started off as 5, and they could all have survived. If there are enough of you, you can sort of... it's a bit of artistic license when it comes to electricity, but the idea is that you can sort of like share the electric shock between all 5 of you. And the fewer of you there are, the more likely that is to cause you serious harm or death. I think you have to put in, honestly, I would still hate this. I would have a bad time with it for sure, but it's far from the worst thing in a Saw film. Speaking of the worst thing in a Saw film, it's 10 Pints of Sacrifice. For the Fatal 2, there is a table with table saws in it, spinning at a pretty unpleasant rate. And between the potentially 5 people left, they have to give 10 pints of blood. There are, of course, only 2 of them left at this point, Britt and Malik. And what follows is about as unpleasant as you might expect. They are rescued at the end, once the door's already open. And Malik is actually shown later in Saw 3D, so he survived. We don't know about Britt, because presumably they couldn't get Julie Benz back. I think this is probably unwinnable, because I think you do just die of blood loss. Certainly if there's only 2 of you left. Even if there's 5 of you, like, yes, you can give 2 pints of blood, you're probably going to give a lot more than that because of all your arteries. Anyway, next up is the glass coffin from Saw 5. This is an interesting one. This is Peter Strahm's 3rd and final trap. And the glass coffin itself is actually safe. Strahm once again ignores Hoffman's explicit warnings not to pursue him. Tracks him down to a room with a big old glass coffin in it, what we've seen before a couple of times throughout the franchise. He is told to get into the coffin, and he'll live. He does not get into the coffin. Instead, he pushes Hoffman into the coffin. And at this point, the coffin lowers into the ground as Hoffman gives him a sick smile, and the walls start closing in. Strahm is... This scene is not quick either. Strahm is slowly crushed to death in this folding room. It's not unwinnable, though. He was told the rules of the game. I have to put it in unfair. I think it's a little unfair to ask Strahm to just back off, because he's clearly not going to do that. So it just feels like a thin pretense to torture someone to death. Yeah, I think that's we can probably just... We can probably like close the first half of this video on it's just an excuse to torture someone to death. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. Alright, I'm back with a second coffee. Excellent, let's go. Right, so we've done Saws 1 to 5. Next up, unsurprisingly, is Saw 6. So the theme of Saw 6 is punishing people who take advantage of other people, I would say, and particularly those in health insurance. But first off, we have Simone and Eddie and the Pound of Flesh. These are 2 predatory lenders, and this is one of a series, I would say, of competitive tests where someone has to die. There's a lot of these. So the idea is that they both have to cut off some flesh, and whoever cuts off the most flesh by mass will be allowed to live. The other one will have drills pushed into their brain through their temples, which you don't love. So we have, on the one hand, a very kind of lean, healthy young woman, and on the other hand we have this big, older guy with a lot more surplus weight, I suppose you could say, who is sort of intended to win and to expose the kind of the flaws in the system that he's at such a big advantage relative to her. However, while he's busy trying to cut off his love handles, she's just like, just cuts off her entire arm. And wins. And he dies horribly. Because someone has to die, it's going in that tier pretty unambiguously. Same with the Oxygen Crusher. Very similar theme. However, this time we have the main protagonist, I suppose. This film's sort of like a precursor almost to Saw 10, which we'll get into obviously at the end. This is William Easton, who is a health insurance executive who's very proud of his algorithm that he uses to deny people health coverage, including John Kramer. Probably a bad idea. Of all the people to con, he picked John Kramer. I'd call that epic bad luck. Anyway, so William allowed people to die through predatory health insurance practices. That's his crime. Hank's crime is smoking. He's a janitor at the health insurance company. It's clear that John doesn't hold him responsible for the health insurance company's practices, just for smoking, I suppose. Just for smoking. So the conceit of this trap is that every time one of William or Hank take a breath, the vice around their abdomen will press tighter and eventually just rupture their abdominal wall or crush their ribs, or just crush them to death, basically. Hank, being an older, overweight gentleman and a smoker, is obviously expected to lose this compared to compared to the much younger and presumably healthier William Easton. And that is in fact exactly what happens. Hank ends up dying pretty unpleasantly. Next up is the Gallows. This is two people who both had junior roles in health insurance. It's another competitive one where somebody has to die. William has to choose one of these people to save and let the other one be hanged with barbed wire. All there is to say about that, really. Does he pick the young guy with his whole life ahead of him, but who doesn't have any family and who no one will miss, or does he go for the beloved grandmother, who would be missed more? Therefore, her life is worth more. Apparently, I don't know. So the idea is that his health insurance algorithm would choose to prioritize the young man's life over the old woman's. However, William does not make that choice, and he chooses to preserve Addie's life over Alan's. Very few genuine morals in here. I mean, prioritizing either of their lives seems pretty ethically bad. Anyway, next up is the Steam Maze. Debbie is an unscrupulous attorney, a lawyer for the health insurance company Umbrella Insurance, or whatever it's called, Umbrella Health, Umbrella something. They're all called Umbrella these days. She has to make her way through a steam maze. Sorry, I'm saying that like anyone knows what that is. A maze that blasts steam at you. Hopefully that's cleared that up. Oh, hey dude. Sorry, I've just seen a small friend. She may make an appearance. You can actually see her just there. Anyway. So in order for her to get through this maze before the device she's wearing shoots a rod straight through her head, William has to kind of help her out by diverting steam up towards him to allow her to get through without like going into shock and dying, presumably. When she reaches the end, when she reaches the end, she has to get the harness off her before it shoots a rod through her brain, and would you believe it? The key to the harness is hidden inside William's abdomen. So she realizes that at the same time he does. She attacks him. Eventually, he is able to fend her off, and she dies by getting a rod shot through her brain. She makes a good faith effort here, and still fails. So I'm going to put this in probably unwinnable. I don't think it's unwinnable by design, but in any case where someone should be able to survive based on the fact that they made a good faith effort to engage with the rules. They haven't broken the rules, they've made a real effort, and still die. You've got to call that unwinnable, right? Probably. Anyway, so next one is the shotgun carousel. This is a lot of people's favourite trap. I think it's kind of boring a little. It's a little kind of boring, maybe? Just a little bit. I'm going to put it in unfair or someone has to die, because there are 6 people here and 4 of them have to die. So this is the dog pit, as William referred to them, the 6 people whose job it was to find flaws in people's health coverage, which would allow the health insurance company to deny them coverage. They are constantly kind of trying to throw each other under the bus and like trying to plead for why they should live rather than the others. But William can only choose 2 of them to live, and he has to, in doing so, he has to mutilate his hands by having like, sharp metal rods, spikes you might call them, pushed into his palms. To symbolise the blood on his hands. It's very heavy-handed. But you know what? Those scars aren't going to last very long, because next up, we've got the acid room. Oh! So, one of the people that William was responsible for denying health insurance to, that resulted in not being able to get treatment, and ultimately dying, was a cardiac patient whose name I didn't write down and can't remember. I think he's played by someone quite famous. He definitely rings a bell. But anyway, he died because of William, and his family have been kidnapped, and so, like, the whole film you've seen little cuts of them like in their cell trying to figure out what's going on. It's his widow and their son, their teenage son. And their teenage son is a little, maybe a little bit more switched on than the mum in terms of seeing a big vat of acid and going, fuck, that's acid. It's not until the end that we figure out what the acid is for. It's for William, buddy! At the end of William's test, they get to choose whether he lives or dies. And while they both agree he should die, the wife can't bring herself to pull the lever, but the son can. And it is gruesome. The deck full of like syringes just swings down and pins William against the wall and just injects him full of hydrofluoric acid. I don't know what it is about shows and using acids that are way, way, way stronger than they need to be. I mean, stronger in like in the chemical sense, in the sense of propensity to generate hydrogen ions, I guess. Hydrofluoric acid? Where are you even getting that, man? I remember in is it Terrifier 2 or Terrifier 3? I think it's Terrifier 2. The dude has a bottle of fluoroantimonic acid. That shit is impossible to store because it's so corrosive. You don't just have a bottle of it, it dissolves glass. Alright, anyway. This is hydrofluoric acid, which is child's play by comparison and still incredibly, incredibly corrosive. I mean, I've got to put this in... Oh man, I think I've got to put this in unfair. Because your fate is entirely in someone else's hands, and it's just such a horrible, horrible way to die. Right, so the last trap in Saw 6 is the Reverse Bear Trap 2.0. The Reverse Bear Trap was, of course, used for Amanda. She survived, won fair and square, one of very, very few people to win a Saw trap. Hoffman is put in the Reverse Bear Trap 2.0 because... Hoffman is Jigsaw's apprentice, and Jigsaw was sort of on speaking terms with his estranged-ish wife, Jill Tuck. I think they were divorced, to be fair, but clearly still had a lot of affection for each other. And his last wish was for Jill to keep an eye on Hoffman and rein him in if he was getting too fresh with it. And that's exactly what she does. She puts him in the Reverse Bear Trap 2.0, which is intended to be unwinnable by design. But he wins. He wins by smashing his wrist with the Reverse Bear Trap. He's like, bring it, you know? And manages to slip free of the shackles, and then obviously can't get the thing off. But he does put it in between the bars and the window, which... slows its opening enough for him to kind of work it out of his jaw while it's in the process of springing open. So unwinnable by design, but he wins. Same with 2 of the 5 unwinnable by design so far. Yeah. So now we're into the silliest Saw film, Saw 3D, the final chapter 7. We have the public execution trap. This is a difficult one to rate because we have here Brad, Ryan 1, and Dina. And their crimes are sort of, again, not really crimes. Dina is cheating on both of them with the other. She's sleeping with them both. And not really a crime, I would say. Brad and Ryan have done like nothing wrong. It's not even clear that they know about each other. I think they know each other socially, but I don't think they realise that they're both sleeping with the same woman. Anyway, the men have a choice. They can either fight it out or they can let Dina die. There are 3 saw blades arranged in a triangle formation, a love triangle, if you will. It's very deep. Brad on one side, Ryan on the other, and they can like push the blades towards each other, or they can just let the blade stay in the middle. And then, of course, the third blade is going straight up, and Dina's going to be lowered onto it. You've probably seen the film at this point. If you haven't, probably go and watch it. Or actually, don't watch it. It's bad. Just watch a different video. There's so many videos on YouTube you could be watching. There's not a tier list for traps in a film you haven't seen. This is sort of the definition of someone has to die. Either the men can fight it out against each other, or they can realise that of the 3 of them, Dina's probably the bad guy, although I still don't think she's really done anything that wrong. Like, certainly not enough to justify something like this, but that's Saw for you. And of course, she ends up dying horribly. Next up is the pain train. This is a dream sequence. This is one of 2 dream sequence traps in Saw. After Jill becomes aware that Hoffman has survived her attempt to kill him, she becomes, I'm going to say paranoid, but reasonably so, I think. And she has an anxiety dream, I would call it, in which she is strapped up to a train track, and Hoffman has like a drone, almost like a remote control car with razor blades on the front, which slams into her and tears her apart. This is unwinnable by design, but it's a dream sequence. What's up next? We have the horsepower trap. So this is really Evan's trap. Evan, famously played by Chester Bennington of Linkin Park, who was a huge fan of the Saw films before his death. And the crimes of these guys are, it's racism. There's like a bunch of racists, I think. It's fairly unclear what they've actually done, apart from be racist. Like, being racist is bad. I strongly agree, but they're not said to have like beaten up racial minorities or anything. I don't know. I feel like they could have given some examples of crimes. But yeah, being racist is bad. I'm not minimizing that. I hope you understand what I'm saying. This is sort of winnable, but also this is another one where Evan makes a good faith effort and fails anyway. This is a fun one. So Evan is strapped into the driver's seat of a car. Well, he's not strapped. He's glued into the driver's seat of a car. And in order to free himself, he has to reach forward and pull a lever. Unfortunately, he's glued into the seat of a car, so he has to pull himself away and tear all the skin off his back in order to reach the lever and pull it. Which he fails to do in time, even though he really, really tries. And in so doing, the timer reaches 0. The car falls onto a woman who I think is meant to be his girlfriend and just crushes her into paste as it takes off through the wall, and the person who is strapped to the wall, pulling behind it a chain which is attached to the jaw and arms of someone else that get torn off. And then with those 3 mutilated corpses in their wake, the car with a screaming Chester Bennington in it flies straight into another car in the junkyard that they're in, and Evan Bennington just flies straight through the windscreen and dies. It's pretty over the top. It's a pretty unpleasant one. I'm going to put it in probably unwinnable because, again, good faith effort and yet failure. What's up next? Oh, it's the fucking lawnmower trap. This is such a stupid one. This is only shown in a flashback, and I have a little bit of beef with this one. So, the plot of Saw 3D, the final chapter 7, is that there is a survivor group for victims of jigsaw traps, and unbeknownst to just about everyone, it's being led by someone who is a fraud. He was never actually put in a trap. It's just a publicity stunt. He's just trying to sell books and DVDs. Anyway, so they're having like a survivors meeting to kind of process their collective trauma. Very reasonable. And one of the survivors says, well, we don't hear what she says, but we see the trap in flashback, where these two people, man and a woman, he's an abusive boyfriend to her, she's the one telling the story, are hanging by their arms. Very odd. I have no idea how they were possibly put into that position. They're hanging by their arms above a bunch of upturned lawnmowers. And he tries to kick at her to get her to fall, even though it's very unclear that he would be safe if she died. And she kind of gets out of the way and then slaps him, and then he just lets go. Because the actor had no idea, understandably, how being lightly slapped at by someone 7 feet away would cause you to fall. When you're hanging on for dear life above some spinning blades. It's a weird one. I don't know how they got into that position, hanging by their arms, how they were forced to do that at gunpoint, I suppose. I don't know. And it's very unclear what lesson they were meant to learn. If you think back to Saw 4, the Cupid's arrow, the spike trap between Rex and Morgan, he was at a clear disadvantage, because once those spikes went in, he was dead, right? There's no way he's getting out of that. All she's got to do is pull the spikes out and free herself. Very symbolically. Bit victim blaming, but whatever. Whereas with this, it's anyone's game, right? Maybe they're mutually abusive. Maybe we're already getting her side of the story. Possibly. Who knows? But because we're not told that, really difficult to know what to think of it. So I'm going to put in unfair or someone has to die, because I think someone has to die here. Next up is the suspended cage. So this is a weird one, because this is where Bobby wakes. He wakes up in this cage, and as he wakes up, the cage is being pulled from a horizontal to an upright position where it's suspended above some maybe 4 or 6 inch spikes or blades. The rules of the game are told to him, basically, that he's going to have to go through and rescue his wife after some horrible ordeals. And then the bottom of the cage falls away. He's able to grab onto the side of the cage, but he's still over some spikes, so he has to swing back and forth, back and forth. You ever play Final Fantasy IX, or many other games like it? And eventually he's able to jump clear of the spikes. Stupid trap. I'm going to put it in not a trap, because frankly, if he dies here, there's no film. So it's clearly not the intention that he's going to die there. It's just meant to be kind of a warning, I suppose. Yeah, so my notes for this one, and I haven't really been looking at my notes, because I don't usually need to, but my notes for this say, Bobby is fraudulent, but moreover just very, very stupid to think he can get away with what he's doing. Anyway, this trap is literally just a measure of physical strength, much like a subsequent one, bad film. And I stand by it. Next up is the Circle of Silence. This is a very unpleasant one. So the victim here is Nina, who is, I believe, a publicist, who assisted Bobby in his fraud by knowingly peddling misinformation, I suppose, just lying. Essentially. Oh shit, what have I done? Oh no. Oh no. What have I done? Oh fuck me. Can I just go forward? Oh, okay. That was a little spicy. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Anyway. So she has to learn to shut her mouth for once, is basically the conceit of this. She has a fish hook in her stomach, which Bobby has to pull out through her esophagus, which is obviously going to tear her esophagus to shreds. Frankly, this is unwinnable, because well, firstly, you die of blood loss. You just do in that circumstance. Second, with that much trauma, yeah, 100%, you just die of blood loss. Secondly, she has to be quiet the whole time. If she's loud at all, then 4 spikes get closer and closer to her neck, and they don't stop where her neck starts. It's pretty bad. It's unwinnable by accident, but still unwinnable, I would say. Next up is the Impalement Wheel. This is also gross. This is someone else who assisted Bobby. Not sure what she was doing to assist Bobby. Probably some kind of lawyer. It's always lawyers and drug dealers. They're the classic Saw victims. Anyway, this one also depends on the actions of another person. In this case, Bobby. God, I had nightmares about this one when Saw 7 came out. Genuinely. So she's in like a hamster wheel, right? She's like lying on her back on a platform in between a hamster wheel, and she's being very, very slowly rotated up towards 3 spikes that will coincide with her eyes and mouth. She'll be freed in 60 seconds. I believe she'll be freed in 60 seconds, but she'll be dead in 30 if the hamster wheel is not stopped turning. It's up to Bobby to stop it turning by lifting some weights. However, when he lifts the weights, spikes get driven into his sides, which, I don't know if you know this, really destroys your core strength. I'm going to put this in probably unwinnable, because Bobby makes a really good effort to save her and still fails. Next up is the Hangman's Noose. I always forget about this one. It's a pretty forgettable trap. This is Bobby's best friend, Kale. Unclear what he did, really. I guess he was just kind of in on it. Anyway, he has to be guided. He's blindfolded and he has a noose around his neck. And he has to be guided along a platform towards Bobby so that Bobby can free him. Of course, if he steps off the platform, he'll hang himself. If he runs out of time, he'll hang himself. This is accidentally unwinnable. Good faith effort still fails. This makes for an uninteresting film, Lionsgate. Alright. Oh god, next up is the Wisdom Teeth. This isn't really a trap as such. It's just that in order to proceed and save his wife, he has to pull his wisdom teeth out and look at the numbers which are etched onto the back of it so that he can get the combination for a key. I suppose it is kind of a trap. In order to proceed, he has to harm himself and save someone else. It's a pretty bad day. It's a really bad day. But it doesn't kill you, so I'm not going to put it any higher than that. But he really sells it. Like, the actor really sells it. He's like slamming his head against the wall, like trying desperately to wrench his teeth out, and it's clearly horrible. Yeah, he sells it. And moves on to save his wife, Joyce. The Saw fandom is... We love to discuss whether certain people deserve what they got. The jury is generally in favour of people like Ivan from Saw 4 deserving what they got. Brenda, also from Saw 4, deserving what they got. Other people like for example, I guess Michael from Saw 2, or Troy maybe from Saw 3. Some people are like, yeah, they deserve what they got, and others will be like, no, they didn't really do anything that bad. The one person that everyone agrees did not deserve what they got is Joyce from Saw 7: The Final Chapter 3D. She is not complicit in Bobby's crimes. She's not guilty of anything other than believing her husband. She was fully taken in by his lies, and for her trouble, she gets burned alive in a brazen bull. It's unwinnable in the sense it requires someone else. But you know, it's unwinnable by design, and the design is Bobby's own design, because of course, as a fake Jigsaw survivor, he had to make up a trap that he was put through, which was that he had to put hooks into his pectoral muscles and then use them to winch himself up to a platform in order to get out. essentially allowing his pecs to take all of the weight of his body. Now, that's not really possible. You would need extremely powerful pecs and very little other body mass in order to have the kind of pecs that could do that. Because we're not talking about pectoral muscle strength, even though, yes, the pecs are not the strongest muscles in that regard. We're just talking about the muscle mass that's required to support that body weight. And the pecs can't, not realistically. So, of course, Bobby has to actually do this for real, and Jigsaw doesn't really care if it's winnable or not. It's like, well, you came up with the trap. So he fails. He nearly succeeds for dramatic effect, but he ultimately fails and has to watch his wife get burned alive, which seems really like a bad thing to do. The next two are not really traps. They are just purely defensive. They're intended to kill police officers that are investigating Hoffman. So I'm going to skip those. And then we're going to close out Saw 7, the final chapter 3D, with the Bear Trap 3.0. Hoffman, of course, has spent the whole film trying to get to Jill Tuck. That's why he killed all those guys in one of the traps that I skipped. He gets to Jill. He puts her in a reverse Bear Trap 3.0, and we get to see what happens. It's not nice. If the blood in Saw 7, the final chapter 3D wasn't so incredibly pink in order to work with the 3D effect in the cinema, it would look really gruesome. Unfortunately, it is pink to work with the 3D effect in the cinema, and so it sort of looks goofy. It's unwinnable by design, and she dies. So next up we have Jigsaw. Jigsaw is, in my opinion, the most forgettable Saw film, but it does have some interesting traps in it. First one is the Bucket Room, for the group known only on the wiki as the Murderers. I had no idea what these people were called. I've never really heard them called anything collectively. No one really talks about this film. It's not a very good film. Anyway, these are people who are mostly guilty of negligent or voluntary manslaughter. And in this one, they are sort of being... They have like buckets on their heads, which is why it's called the Bucket Room, or the Buckethead Room. And they can see through them, but they're being pulled towards a wall which is full of spinning blades, and in order for the chains to stop, they have to cut themselves voluntarily on the blades. A moment later, the blades will stop. If they don't cut themselves voluntarily, they're just going to be pulled into it, and then they'll get cut all at once and probably die. And we actually sort of see that happen. It sort of cuts away at the end, as Logan is being pulled into the wall. He was sedated too heavily, didn't wake up. It's later revealed that Jigsaw actually saved him because he didn't give him a fair shot, and the big twist is that Logan is actually running his own game much later, which is being shown concurrently with the events that we're seeing in the past. It's not a very good twist, if I'm honest. It's pretty dumb for a lot of reasons. They go to great lengths to try and hide it, up to and including using flat screen TVs in shots that are meant to be in the past, where this was set in like the mid-90s. I don't know how many of you guys were around in the mid-90s. I fucking was. No fucker had a flat screen TV. That was not a thing. Anyway, that's the Bucket Room. The Bucket Room is... Honestly, I'd still hate this. All you gotta do is spill a little bit of blood. By Saw standards, not too terrible. Next up is the Chain Hangers. Terrible name for this trap, but that's what it's given as on the tier list, so that's what I've gone with. The victim here, the intended victim and the actual victim, is Carly. Carly... was a purse snatcher, and she stole $3.53 from a woman who gave chase to her. That woman then collapsed, was unable to give chase, and Carly, kind of watching, saw there's an inhaler in this bag. But there's also $3.53, so I'm just going to go. Jigsaw asks her in her test what the value of human life is to her, and then presents her with 3 syringes, one of which is filled with acid, one of which is filled with the antidote to a poison that she has coursing through her veins at this very moment, and the other is just filled with a harmless saline solution. Don't really know why they included that one. Each of them has a number on it, and one of the numbers is 3.53, $3.53. Carly knows that's how much she took. You can hear her repeating the number to herself, like she knows it's significant. but she doesn't know if that's the one that's going to kill her or cure her. It's probably the antidote. Like, looking at it as an impartial observer, like, that's probably the antidote. Like, the answer to the question, what is a human life worth to you, is $3.53. Own up to, you know, what you... own up to what you've done, I guess. Confess. But in that situation, do you really assume that's the antidote? Or do you assume that that's the acid? I think it's unfair. So I'm gonna put it in unfair. Next up is the leg wires and the grain silo trap. They're sort of connected. So Ryan 2, his crime is negligent manslaughter. He caused a car crash because he was kind of a drunk passenger, like being distracting, and it was kind of sort of his fault, and sort of more that he tried to cover it up after the fact and didn't take ownership of his crimes, which is the theme of this film. But his real crime is trying to escape the barn they're all in. And in doing so, he gets himself caught in the leg wires trap, where he falls through a false floor in the barn, and his leg is snagged in piano wire, which is going to, you know, cut his leg off, basically, if he pulls a lever. However, the only way he can save, what are their names, Mitch and Anna, is to pull that lever and cut his leg off. Otherwise, they're going to be buried in a grain silo, which it's reasonably common knowledge, but it bears repeating. I think that people die in grain silos all the time. You can swim in water. You cannot fucking swim in grain. It doesn't have any buoyancy to it. You cannot support yourself in a big old pile of grain, and you will just fall and you will suffocate. And it happens all the time, but it's genuinely really, really scary. Of course, because this is the guys who wrote Jigsaw, Spiral, and Saw X. Not very good writers. It's wild how good Saw X was, or Saw 10, considering it was written by these guys. The grain would have been scary enough, but no. As well as grain, a bunch of sharp objects like knives and rakes and things come flying down in the grain silo. It just makes it kind of goofy, makes it kind of silly. Don't like it very much. I mean, I think I've got to put this in a pretty bad day. He's got to cut his leg off. How do you survive that? You don't really survive that. He doesn't even have anything to make a tourniquet with. So, I think realistically you probably die here, right? I think you cut your leg off and just bleed to death. Like, I don't see how you wouldn't. Don't know. I might just put it in unfair. I feel like I'm putting a lot of them in unfair, but also a lot of them are unfair. And the grain silo trap's going with it because, of course, it's all the same trap, really. Next up is the spiralizer, or the cycle trap. So this is Mitch's trap, and his crime was selling a bike that he knew was faulty to someone who just turned out to be Jigsaw's nephew. I know, right? Pausing for effect. To have a coffee because I'm real fucking tired. It's 4 p.m. How's it 4 p.m? Wild. Alright, so this is a gross one. Mitch has to lower himself into this spinning kind of conical blade, spiralizer, in order to pull a lever which will free him. The spiralizer is being powered by the very same bike you sold to my nephew. It's a silly trap. But you know what? He makes a good faith effort and dies anyway. Sorry, not sorry. Because all it takes is you touch that thing once, and suddenly it pushes you, like, or pulls you into it. Basically, it's a blender. Encoding overloaded. Fuck off. I don't know what that means. I do know what that means, and I don't like it. We're nearly done. Yeah, that's probably unwinnable. Next up is the shotgun keys trap. Silly name for a trap. Silly trap though, so it's fine. The people involved here are Anna and Ryan 2. Ryan 2 did not die of blood loss after cutting his leg off, but pretty close. He's clearly having a bad time. Anna is widely considered to be one of the worst people in the Saw franchise, along with people like Ivan from Saw 4. Her crime was... Her crime was not having postnatal depression. Her crime was killing her baby and allowing her husband to believe that he was responsible for smothering the baby in his sleep. After which he killed himself. She shows no remorse for her actions, and is unequivocally a terrible person. That's all I'm going to say about that. This is a winnable trap, but it's another one where you've sort of got to read Jigsaw's mind. Read Jigsaw's mind. Read the Dungeon Master's mind, is what I was sort of half trying to say there. Jigsaw puts a key into a shotgun shell, unbeknownst to Anna, and then gives her a shotgun and says, "This is the key to your freedom." Of course, understandably, she thinks, "Oh, I'm just going to kill Ryan and I'll be free." Unfortunately, the shotgun is rigged to backfire, and she ends up blowing her own head off. It's unfair, I think. It's requiring you to understand exactly what Jigsaw means when he says something completely and utterly ambiguous. But it's fine. It's only Anna. Next up, laser collars. Ooh. Weird one. The victim here is Brad Halloran, who is a corrupt detective, allowed some guilty people to go free, including Logan's sister, niece, some woman in his family. So this game is entirely set up to ensnare and essentially kill Brad Halloran. This is an unwinnable trap, intended solely to punish Brad. It's set up like a game where he's against Logan and he has to like confess his sins. And he's like, "Oh, I'll go first," and then like presses Logan's button. Logan's timer starts counting down, and then Logan has to like, "Oh, my sins are whatever," and then the lasers like cut Logan's head in half, but they don't actually cut his head in half. He just kind of collapses, and then Brad's like, "Oh my god, now I've got to confess my sins," and he confesses that he let all those people go free, and they went on to kill other people, and it was a big problem. And then Logan gets up, and he's like, "Ha ha ha ha! It was me the whole time," and I'm just so tired even thinking about the plot of this film. It's just so bad. Anyway, the lasers activate on Brad's collar and cut his head in 8 pieces like a watermelon, being cut apart by lasers. And it's sort of... I've seen it compared to Demogorgon from the 2nd season of Stranger Things. It is, yeah, I sort of see it. Unpleasant. Anyway, we're on to Spiral. There's actually not that many traps in Spiral, which is odd. Only 5 by the looks of it. That said, they're all pretty fun. The first one is the subway trap. This is a corrupt cop called Marv, who is definitely abusive and probably a murderer. It's a very, very silly trap where he is on a stepladder with his tongue in a device. And if he cuts his tongue out, he can go free. Otherwise, there'll be a train along in a minute. And he opts to just kind of kick the stepladder away from him and just let gravity tear his tongue out. Unclear whether that would actually generate enough force, I think. But anyway, it does in the film, and he tears his tongue out, collapses, and then the train immediately just comes along and kills him anyway. I think this is probably unwinnable by mistake. Having your tongue torn out was a pretty common medieval punishment just because it's so viscerally unpleasant to think about. And it's got about a 50-50 chance of killing you without very prompt medical attention, just from blood loss and shock. Certainly, you tear your own tongue out, you're not going to be in any position to get off a platform, or get off a train track onto a platform which is like several feet above you, you're just not going to have the physical strength and wherewithal to do that. So I think that's probably unwinnable by mistake. Next up we have the finger trap. This is the victim of this is Fitch, who is by all accounts an even less pleasant person than Marv. Also a corrupt cop, also definitely abusive. At the very least, willing to let someone who he didn't like die without remorse. May have potentially killed people in the past. Anyway, he's in a bathtub, classic Saw, and his fingers are in this kind of mesh like finger trap things, and he has to bite down on something which will complete a connection that will tear his fingers off slowly, and if he fails to do that, then the bathtub is filling with water, and once he reaches an electrode it will fry him. I don't love it. I think it's a pretty bad day. It's possible it's unwinnable for most people, because when your fingers are slowly being torn off, you're likely to scream, and when you start screaming, the connection breaks, and so your fingers stop being torn off briefly. It's just a bad time. Next up we have the wax trap. This is a silly one. The victim here is Angie, who is a corrupt police captain. She's portrayed more sympathetically than the other cops, but she's still complicit in the culture of the department that she runs, for sure. This is accidentally unwinnable. It's not unwinnable by design, I don't think, but in order to avoid being drowned in hot wax, she has to sever her spinal cord. I mean, you think if you're writing a Saw film, you would probably try and learn the first thing about anatomy, maybe? I don't know. You don't sever your spinal cord and live. Certainly not reliably, and I mean, you're at the very least going to be obviously paralysed by the neck, from the neck down. That's unfair, man. Come on, that's not a winnable trap. Next up we have the glass grinder, the recycling plant trap. The victim here is Peter 2. He is also a corrupt cop and definitely a murderer. And this is another one that's unwinnable because it depends on the actions of another person. So, yeah, we're going to put this in probably unwinnable. The conceit here is that he is strung up in front of a glass grinder in a recycling plant, and bottles coming in, very reminiscent of the pigs in Saw 3. I think that's deliberate. Bottles are slowly coming in and being dumped into this hopper. They're being ground up into shards of glass, which are then being blown at him by a huge industrial fan and embedding themselves in his body. He's going to die of shock, blood loss. Just honestly, it could easily just be like a chance nick of an artery and he's gone, right? In order to free him, Ezekiel Banks, the protagonist, played by Chris Rock, played pretty competently by Chris Rock, actually. I quite liked him in this. Has to kind of brave the same storm in order to free him, but is unable to do so in time, and Peter 2 dies. Next up we have the puppet trap. This is listed as Marcus Banks' test, but it's not Marcus Banks' test, it's Ezekiel Banks' test. Marcus Banks is he's just being strung up like a puppet as IVs are slowly draining him of blood. In this, I actually can't exactly remember what Ezekiel has to do. Oh yeah, no, that's it. Ezekiel has to, he has a gun with one bullet, right? And he can use it to either hit a target, which will free his father, Marcus Banks, or he can shoot the guy who he's just uncovered as being a Jigsaw copycat. So he either has to save his father and let the Jigsaw copycat go, or he can shoot the Jigsaw copycat, whose name I still can't remember. This is such a bad film. And let his father die, and ultimately he doesn't manage either. And Marcus Banks also dies. unwinnable by virtue of depending on someone else's actions. Okay, so now we're on to Saw 10, Saw X, which is far, far better than most of the previous films, I would say. That said, I think the traps are underwhelming in Saw X, for the most part. I think the film itself is very, very good for a Saw film. It's still a Saw film. But the traps themselves are kind of meh, in my opinion. So anyway, first off, we have the eye vacuum trap. We don't know the guy who's in this trap. He hasn't been given a name, which I think is a first for... Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing names for all of the other people in these traps in my spreadsheet that I spent half the morning doing. Even the guy in the drill chair has been given a name canonically. I guess the SWAT guys in Saw 2 aren't given names, but that's not really a trap. Anyway, this guy, we don't have a name for. And this is the second of two dream sequence traps. The first one being the pain train that Jill Tuck is put through. Anyway, this is a hospital janitor, custodian. In the UK, we would generally just call them cleaners, maybe. Who John just happens to see stealing something from a sleeping patient. John is like imagining him putting him in this trap, and then we kind of cut back to reality, and the guy sees John looking down at him and is like, "You just got to put all the stuff back. You didn't see shit, son." And John's like, "Good choice." But anyway, the conceit of this trap is that the guy has to, and this is the one that's in all the promotional material for Saw X, because he's strapped in this chair and he's got his hands like just kind of in shackles, and he's got over his eyes he's got two tubes that are kind of crossing over like an X shape, so it's a good promotional shot. In the film, actually, they're not in an X shape, they're just like straight up into the side. But anyway, he has to break his fingers by turning a dial with one hand in order to break the fingers on his other hand. And if he doesn't do that in time, then his eyes will be sucked out of their sockets. A lot of people are saying this is a pretty tame one. Honestly, I don't completely disagree. But I think that you could probably do it, right? Like, I don't think that... I think if the alternative is having your eyes sucked out of your head and then dying of shock and blood loss. I mean, or more likely, I mean, your eyes aren't standalone things, right? They're not like little marbles in your eye sockets. They're attached to an optic nerve, which is quite a chunky boy. And frankly, they're kind of the sensory parts of your brain. Depending on the force, if the force is enough to suck your eye sockets out of your skull, it's definitely enough to at least cause serious brain hemorrhaging and probably suck part of your brain out of your skull as well. That kills you. I think, though, I've got to put this in, honestly, I would still hate this. I don't love it, but I'm pretty sure I could break the fingers on one of my hands in order to save my eyes and brain. Alright, so next up we have the pipe bomb trap. So the conceit of Saw 10 is that John Kramer, this is back like between Saw 1 and 2, it's set. John Kramer, terminal brain cancer, hears about this miracle cure being peddled by some doctor in Norway. Well, it turns out his daughter's got a clinic in Mexico, and they can do like some surgery and give you a cocktail of drugs, and then it's like a miracle cure for cancer, right? And turns out to be a scam. And John only realizes this when he realizes that he was never actually operated on. He goes back to the place where he was, to the place where they scammed him, and they are gone. Everyone's just gone. They've packed up and left for some reason or other. So he enlists the help of Amanda and Hoffman, tracks them down and brings them back to test them. First up is Diego, who was the driver who took him there. He was complicit in the whole thing. He was also posing as a doctor while there, which seems like a ridiculous risk to take. Like, why would you have the same guy be both the taxi driver and the doctor? Because this is a commercial taxi driver that Cecilia Peterson, the villain of the piece, has orchestrated, and she's constantly shown to be incredibly intelligent, on a level with John, although she is eventually outplayed by him. I don't know why they had the taxi driver and the doctor be the same guy, but they did, and it's Diego, and he has bombs strapped to his arms. He also has scalpels duct taped to his hands, which implies that he's not going to have very many muscles in order to use his hands for very long. So he might have to use the muscles in his forearm instead in order to just kind of dig the bombs out of his arms. They're being held in with wires that the scalpel can't cut through, but they can cut through his flesh and his bone. Well, not his bone, but enough of his flesh and muscle. So he basically has to just completely destroy the muscles in his arm in order to generate enough looseness. That's not how you know what I mean. In order to slip the pipe bombs off his arm, and he actually manages it. I'm going to put this in a pretty bad day because frankly, I think in real life this kills you from blood loss. So that's true of most sword traps, to be honest. But he succeeds, and John gets him medical care. It's implied, anyway, because he's shown being pretty keen to get people medical care later on when they pass their test. No spoilers, of course. Next up is Valentina and the wire saw trap. Valentina was also involved with Cecilia, posing as a nurse. This is a rough one. She has a wire saw, which is going to cut her head off, basically, as Amanda points out. And in order to prevent that from happening, and the traps in this wild. This one and the next one are just ridiculous, convoluted messes of traps. What Valentina has to do is cut her leg off above the knee using what John Kramer describes as a Julie saw, which is it's just a thin wire saw that John claims can deliver a very clean cut to the bone. What they can't do is cut through the strongest part of the human body, which is the femur, the bone in the thigh. And yet, that's what Valentina has to do. Cut straight through her femur with a saw, and then suck out 3 ounces of bone marrow, which then get fed through a pipe, sieved out to remove the blood, and once there's 3 ounces of marrow left on the sieve, then she'll be freed. Grim. I don't think sucking out the marrow would actually hurt, because you don't have nerve endings in your bones. That's not a place that your body needs to feel pain. If anything's fucking with the inside of your bones, you're already fucked, right? There's no need, evolutionarily, for you to be able to feel pain. There's no nerve endings. Certainly, to my knowledge anyway, I'd be very surprised if there were. But of course, cutting your leg off does sting a little bit. I think this is, however, unwinnable by accident, because you have an artery in your thigh. I don't know if you knew that. I don't know if the writers of Saw 10 knew that. Yes, they give her a tourniquet. That's not a catch-all, right? Like, you still die of blood loss. That's your femoral artery. Without prompt medical care, you are 100% just done. And she doesn't even apply the tourniquet very well, so no, unwinnable by mistake, I think. Next up we have the brain surgery trap, which is again a convoluted mess. This is fucking obviously, it's a brain surge, obviously unwinnable. Matteo is the quote-unquote anaesthetist, and he actually is an anaesthetist, or at least, well, no, that's interesting actually, because I'm only just thinking of this. He's shown to have absolutely no medical knowledge whatsoever. Because the whole idea of this is like, oh, you think you can do brain surgery? Or how about you do brain surgery yourself? You cut out part of your own brain. You cut out part of your own brain, and then if you cut out enough of your own brain, we're not going to tell you how much to cut out, but if you cut out enough, you'll be alright. Because your brain will dissolve in this enzyme, unclear what, and that will generate presumably some kind of electrical potential or pH change or some sort of electrochemical change, that will open a door that will allow you to free yourself before this kind of waffle iron, this George Foreman grill of pain closes on your face and kills you, which is what ends up happening, even though he's able to cut out part of his own brain. Wild. But the anesthetic is the only part of Jigsaw's surgery that actually seems to go alright. It's a conscious surgery, so he's like, as Cecilia tells him, he's drifting in and out of consciousness, and that's what ends up happening. So he may not be like a trained doctor, but he clearly knows what he's doing with anesthetic, which is not trivial. So yeah, I don't know. This again comes down to, I think, relatively poor writing, but I think the direction in Saw 10 is good, and I think the film's good as a whole, but yeah. Next up we have the radiation trap for Gabriella. He's going a little easier on Gabriella. Gabriella's also complicit, but it's clear that she feels some remorse for what she's doing. It's clear that she is just doing it for money because she's desperate, because she's a drug addict. And Amanda even kind of lampshades that, and she's like, look, drugs have a hold on people that people who haven't been through it don't understand. Maybe we should be easier on her. Which is obviously very true. And John's like, suck up. However, this is called the radiation trap, but this is clearly just kind of a heat gun that she's in front. It's not radiation. It's clearly heat. You can see like the coils are glowing bright orange. She's not being radiation burned. She's being regular burned. And in order to get out of the way of the radiation, she has to break her wrist and her ankle in order to slip them free of her restraints. It's not too bad. Honestly, I would still hate it. But it's winnable. And she does win, and then is unceremoniously killed by Cecilia. Next up, we have the bloodboarding trap. People seem to like this one. I don't. I think this is one of the few moments in the film where you can really tell that it was written by the same people who did Jigsaw and Spiral. This is really over the top. Not in terms of violence necessarily. This is a trap that actually John intends could go one of two ways. Either Cecilia and her boyfriend/accomplice Parker Sears could be put into this trap, in which case relatively tame considering their crimes, as up there with the most despicable people in the series, more so. I think they probably are the most despicable people in the entire franchise, excluding John himself and Hoffman, possibly. I think it's close. However, if Cecilia and Parker don't play by the rules, which is what John and Amanda expect, they're sort of expecting that John and Amanda will get forced into this trap instead because they know how Cecilia's mind works. As such, it's intended to look like... It's intended to be relatively tame. And it's intended to be for two people to work together in order to save both of their lives. However, John ends up getting put into this trap with an innocent child, which is clearly something that he didn't anticipate and which he is very distraught about. Same as Amanda, even Parker doesn't seem to be a huge fan of it, but Cecilia shows no remorse at all as she forces Carlos into this trap. It's essentially waterboarding. The two victims can either fight against each other or they can work together and control like who is subjected to it. Excuse me, at any given time. There's a piece of very clunky foreshadowing early in Saw X where John is actually bonding with this kid, Carlos, and he's helping him fix his bike. And he's like trying to teach him, but he doesn't speak Spanish and Carlos doesn't speak English. So he kind of asks him, what's the Spanish word for pull? And eventually Carlos responds, hella. And eventually, obviously much later, John has to tell him, don't pull that lever because that lever will kill you, basically. But all he can say is, no hella, no pull, don't pull. Which is very clunky foreshadowing, but honestly, I didn't see it coming back, so fair enough, it worked on me, I guess. It's kind of clunky in hindsight. Anyway, John and Amanda were sort of meant to be forced into this trap. John and Carlos end up being forced into it instead. It's really just a distraction. It clearly is very unpleasant. I'm going to put it in not a trap, because it's functionally, it's just a distraction. It could kill you, I suppose, if you weren't working together, but I don't see it as a genuine trap. Next up is the gas chamber. This is Cecilia and Parker's true trap. And their crime, of course, was conning dying people. Dying people! In this, they have to essentially kill each other to survive. There is a room filling with gas, and there is one air hole. Cecilia, as the more ruthless of the two, ends up killing Parker. I think this is unfair, or someone has to die, but again, no one's shedding any tears for these people. And Cecilia is just sort of left... Well, you know what? It's probably unwinnable by design, right? Yeah, there's no way out of that. There's no way. Because she's still locked in. The room is still full of gas, which has been shown to be kind of corrosive and been burning Parker's flesh, like, pretty much as soon as he came in contact with it. She's still trapped in there with all of that stuff. She's got no food. She's got no way out. Door's locked. This is an Adam Stanheidt situation, but there's no Amanda coming back to mercy kill her. And then in the mid-credits scene of Saw X, we get this hot mess here, the disembowelment trap. The guy who essentially recruited John into this scam, who is obviously in on it, and was like, hey, my stage 4 pancreatic cancer was miraculously cured. He is tracked down by John and Hoffman. It's the first time we actually see Hoffman in the film. And back in that bathroom between Saw 1 and 2, he's just kind of strung up, and he's got a device strapped to his abdomen with, like, kind of robotic crawler blades. This just presumably going to dig into his abdomen until he dies of blood loss. We don't see its effects. The camera cuts away. I think it was meant to set up a sequel, maybe, with Hoffman doing something, probably killing Cecilia in some horrible way. But yeah, we never see it. But this is, I'm pretty sure this is unwinnable by design. We don't know what the rules of the game are, if there is even a game at all. It looks like it's just an unpleasant way to kill someone. Wow, so that was 2 hours, pretty much on the dot. 2 hours of rating 77 Saw traps. No idea why I recorded this, really. Almost certainly not going to upload anything else to YouTube in the next 5 years. But just had an itch and scratched it. So, yeah, see you in the future, or possibly not.